Talk to me first about your thoughts on phase one.
It's an interesting and fairly broad agreement. Early opinions are mixed in terms of just how broad beyond the expectations were, but I think it's a good sign in terms of the sovereign states coming to an agreement, at least in this phase one.
What do you want to see from phase two?
Huawei is a global company, but it's also a private employee-held company. So we don't the trade deals between the two companies are not two countries are not Huawei. Huawei has no input there. However, like any global company, we look for trade stability as well as open markets, and we've always preached that, and we hope that's the result down the road as we get to phase two or phase three.
So talk to me a little bit more. You mentioned that Huawei is a global company. How has the impact been so far from the trade tensions?
I think like any global company, when you have issues of supply and you have issues that are mixed up into politics, there's always tension. But Huawei always has business continuity plans in place, as many successful companies do. So the effects haven't been that drastic. But we're, like any company, you're always looking for stability and free markets.
You know, Don, it was interesting. We heard from Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin today, and he said very clearly that Huawei is not a chess piece in the U.S. China trade fight. He wants it to be remaining a very clear national security issue separate from trade. Do you agree that that's how it should be treated? In
either case, I think what the ambition for the company, Huawei's mission is to connect the world. The issues enumerated by the U.S. government in the past about Huawei get to basic issues of trust, but also get to basic issues of security. The goal for Huawei and the goal for the U.S. governments are the same. We provide robust and secure networks. We share the same goal. So I think the dialogue needs to center on that and how to get there most effectively to the benefit of global consumers, but specifically consumers in the United States.
What is Huawei doing to ensure that our data is being protected from Beijing?
If you look at Huawei's cybersecurity efforts, Huawei is the first company one of the first companies to put together, as our CSO, Jan.15 did, an end-to-end cybersecurity program. Cybersecurity for this company is not bolted on. It's a process that goes through every process in the company. We also, to go the extra mile globally, which no other vendor in our business has done, opened a cybersecurity center in England, opened a cybersecurity center in Bonn and Brussels as well. As John Suffolk said when testifying before the Parliament, Huawei stands naked before you. We are the most inspected vendor in our industry, and we've come through fairly well on that.
So, Don, can you definitively tell us then that Beijing no data has ever been turned over to Beijing, given that's some of the issues that the U.S. and others?
No, absolutely not. The head of the company has said he's never gotten a request from Beijing or any other government to turn over data. More importantly, if you look at how Huawei handles its relationship with the vendors, with the operators to whom it sells, Huawei is in business with 45 of the top 50 global broadband providers and has a long track record. Not a single major cybersecurity event is traced back to any of Huawei's equipment. The reason being is Huawei takes cybersecurity seriously and takes the data which those networks carry seriously. We do not have access to that network data unless given specific permission by the broadband provider who controls that access. If you look at our customers in the United States, any invitation for Huawei to work with its equipment in a network comes from specific invitation to the company. It's on special laptops that every keystroke is monitored both by Huawei and by the provider. So there's no chance for us to access data we don't have.
So, Don, you are Director of Congressional Affairs. How have conversations been going with members of U.S. Congress?
Slowly. But we're trying to build an education process in these areas, okay? If you look at some of the legislation passed in the last 18 months, the Congress did a very good job over a year and a half ago putting together a supply chain bill for the federal government. That's a very good model working with NIST to ensure supply chains for all the equipment that goes in every network. What we're saying to the Congress is all networks are insecure. You have to work with the vendors, such as Huawei, who are partners with the operators and with the customers of networks to provide the most robust security. every vendor should be tested. Every vendor should be gone through a risk assurance and risk mitigation process. That ensures the most secure and robust network. And that's the communication process we're trying to get through to the Congress.
Don, how concerned are you now about this spreading to other countries? The UK has come out and they said that they're vowing to keep Huawei out of key security infrastructure. You worried about the pressure that the U.S. is putting on some of our other allies?
There has been a dedicated diplomatic campaign with regard to Europe by the U.S. government. But what you're seeing and developing in those countries, first of all, in the British case, Huawei is a strategic supplier to British Telecom. We have put a cybersecurity center in there where the government, as well as the customer, as well as academics, have insight to any software, any hardware that's deployed with that customer. That's going a step further than any other vendor has gone. The decision so far by the British government is pretty much status quo in terms of where Huawei operates between the core and RAN. In the European governments, you see developments both in Brussels and in Germany where they're looking at setting, through NESEA as well as 3GPP, setting up standards that all vendors have to meet, setting up a testing regime and verification process that all vendors have to meet. And we think that's the rational, right approach to get the most robust and most secure network.
Don, if we get 5G in the U.S. in 2020 with some of the American big telecom companies providing that, what then is the impact on Huawei in terms of even getting market share in the U.S. down the road?
I think, if you're looking, it's on a continuous basis, okay? If you look at 4G and 5G, the coming 5G will be an overlay over current 4G networks. Where Huawei's big concern right now in the United States is moves that the U.S. government has made to prohibit Huawei from its current customer base in the rural areas. These are the most underserved and unserved areas in the country. Our concern is with some policy decisions that are in the making, will be that we'll leave those consumers in those areas high and dry. The current operators, if you want to call them frontier operators, who do their best to provide service to the least served areas, need support. Huawei has been very good at putting equipment and helping those vendors with their mission of connecting most of the unserved people there. I think our concern is that you could leave that part of the population of the United States high and dry when it comes moving forward on 5G.